21st meeting of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission to order. I will do the roll call because we don't have our esteemed Denise with us. And Kelly, I know you're taking notes. I'll try to take notes and then we can compare notes after the fact. How's that?
Great, thank you very much.
All right, so Anan Amiri.
Here.
Bonnie Billups.
Here.
Sarah Birch.
Present.
DeAndre Caldwell. And our newest commissioner, Ms. Stephanie Carter.
Here.
Hi, welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Thank
We
you.
are so happy to have you.
Thank you.
We are looking forward to working with you. Commissioner Mashad Evans. Mohammed Othman.
Present.
Francis Tadoro Hargraves.
Here.
Jude Walton.
Here.
And I am present as well. So before we get started, is there a motion to amend the agenda? I believe there was an item that needed to be added. Commissioner Tadoro Hargraves.
Yes, I apologize to everyone. I emailed out the memorandum that the subcommittee for the trespass group had worked on, and I emailed that earlier today. So if we could add that to the agenda under new business, either the new item 4 or 5, and then hopefully we can get to it tonight. And then if we're not able to vote on it, we would postpone the vote till our next meeting. But if we could get it started, it would be great.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of adding this item to the agenda?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay.
Sorry.
Chairwoman.
Quick
I'll
request. I apologize for being out of order. Francis, I just looked for it. Can you resend that? I'm not finding it.
Sure,
Sorry.
that's okay.
As well,
Commissioner Hoffman?
to me, if you could send it to me as well, Francis, thanks.
Yes,
Thank you.
I would like to add to the agenda a motion to observe a moment of silence, remembering the passing of 2 civil rights giants, Reverend C.T. Vivian and Congressman John Lewis.
Is there a second?
Second.
And all in favor of adding to the agenda a moment of silence for C.T. Vivian and John Lewis? All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Shall we do that now, Commissioner Othman?
I would like probably to do that before we start our meeting.
All right.
And you can call that.
Let's do that now. A moment of silence in honor of 2 civil rights icons whom we've lost this week, C.T. Vivian and John Lewis. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Othman.
Thank you.
So now we come to the part of our meeting where we have a public forum. Kelly, could you reiterate the phone number that people should call, please, out loud? Oh, I'm sorry, I do have it here. So we are being broadcast live on YouTube. And if you would like to participate by phone, please understand there's about a 30-second delay. So don't listen to yourself on YouTube while you're talking. If you'd like to call in for public forum, the number is 877-853-5247 or 888-788-7225. The meeting ID is 916-8830-6206. And Vice Chair Tadora Hargraves, could you reiterate the rules of public forum, please?
Yes, we will have you on. You are free to ask us questions or make comments. The difference between this and regular public commentary is that you may interact with us. So if you do ask us a question, we will answer. You will have up to 5 minutes time. And once your time is up, you could go back into the queue should you choose, but we do ask for you to move on, especially if there's others in line. But this is an opportunity for you to interact with us and ask us any questions.
And I want to acknowledge that we have Police Chief Michael Cox with us, as well as our liaison from the Ann Arbor Police Department, Lieutenant Dortch, as well as Lieutenant Cervantes, who actually isn't technically on the clock with us. We're not making him work, but if you have a question that he might be inclined to answer it if it falls in his bailiwick. Kelly, do we have any callers?
We do. We have 3 callers. One has their hand raised, so I'll start with them. Just a second. Caller, with the phone number ending in 677, did you wish to participate in the public forum?
Hi, yeah, this is Michelle Hughes, and I wanted to talk about a couple weeks ago. I tweeted at you guys a proposed thing to some policies that the police department could adopt about dealing with trans people and not gender nonconforming people. I gave you a sample of the way they do it in Milwaukee, and that's not, I'm not saying let's adopt that wholesale, but that's just one such policy that I was aware of because I know someone who was involved in making that happen in Milwaukee. So I wonder if you've had a chance to look at that, and if we could, work on getting something like that adopted here. I did have a couple of notes about it. If you have looked at it, I noticed that there's a bunch of language in there where they use he or him, like he/him. I think that should be changed to use a more gender inclusive thing, like using they or something like that. Also, I noticed that in their policy, it mentions the idea that someone could be making non-credible claims about their gender, and I don't think that's something that we should have. I don't think that's an idea we should promote. But there's a lot of good stuff in there talking about making sure that if a transgender person is using a name that's different from what's on their legal ID, that police should respect that and, note that as an alias rather than like trying to, act like they're lying about their identity or something like that, which I've heard of police officers doing in other places. Also talking about making sure that if there's a situation where you're going to get patted down by an officer, and you want to have someone you want to be patted down by an officer where that is appropriate, gender appropriate to you, that you have the opportunity to do that, and also that you're able to be put into a holding cell that is appropriate to your gender identity. So those are some of the things that are in there.
Michelle, would you do me a favor?
Yeah, I wonder if...
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. Would you email that to, A2policeoversight@gmail.com? If you do it now, I'll send it out to everybody because I meant to do that. I meant to send it out to everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much. But keep talking. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta find my link to that again, so it'll be a second. But and then the other thing was that now that the standards of practice and stuff like that are posted, I was able to look through there, and the police have a standard of practice about non-biased policing, and it mentions a bunch of protected classes that that we're going to be non-biased against. But I noticed that gender identity and gender expression were not on that list. So that should be a pretty easy fix. I talked to the chief the other day at that meet and greet, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, we'll get that right in there." So let's remind us to do that one. I also mentioned these things to the city's LGBTQ liaison, who is Travis Redina, and he's apparently also already been in talks with the police department about this. So y'all might want to coordinate about that. So yeah, and then if anyone wants to get in touch with me, you'll have my email in a second when I email you, and then I can also get you in touch with those Milwaukee activists who put the Milwaukee thing together. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you guys got a chance to look at that, since I know y'all don't have enough to do already.
That's all right. That's an important thing that we should be
this is an important thing to do. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Thanks for thinking about it.
Yeah, we can multitask.
All right, and I'll send you that email. Yep. Well, good work. Keep it up. And yeah, I'll get you that email in just a second here.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments before we move you back to the attendee portion? Okay.
Michelle, you good?
It looks like she left.
Yep.
Yeah, she might have moved herself.
We do have one more caller.
Okay.
Hello, caller with phone number ending in 892. You're on if you'd like to participate in public forum.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Ruth. I've been at a few city council meetings. And I guess I was kind of wondering, since a lot of people at city council meetings and other conversations that we've had have kind of talked about how, like, well, of course we don't need an armed response for, most of these calls. If there's been a real, and there's also, it looks like been some conversation around like de-escalation tactics and things like that. But I wonder if there's been any real conversation around, disarming police.
Chief Cox, have you been engaged in any conversations about de-arming police? Or Ruth, maybe you didn't mean just the police, us too?
What do you mean?
Well, I was just thinking, I was asking the chief if he'd been involved in any conversations about that, but maybe you wonder if others of us have been in those conversations too.
I was just wondering if anyone's had any conversations about like requesting that police, like there has been, it's been kind of offhandedly mentioned in city council, like, oh, of course, like we don't need, an armed response to most things. It's just like, okay, well then maybe the police don't need to be armed, is what I'm pointing out and asking. Or is that a conversation that's actually meaningfully happening in any kind of way with ICPOC and with police, I think is what I'm asking.
Got it. I think, so just from my point of view, and anybody else can and should jump in, only in the, Ruth, I've only been engaged in those conversations at the very periphery of them, in that talking with other community activists and people across the country about how they envision that. And I know here we've talked a little bit about how could you use other public or social services to respond to calls, like when we used to have like a community mental health team that did that, or are there other teams that could do that? And would they precede the police? Would police have to clear a scene first? Would they have to make sure that it was safe for such a person to go to a scene? And so those are the only ways in which I've engaged in those kinds of conversations about whether somebody might make a response to a call without being armed. That doesn't mean that we cannot engage in those conversations and that we should not be engaged in those conversations. But to this point, those are the only ways in which I've been, talking about it substantively in terms of having other people other than police respond, and those people are not armed. I haven't had conversations with the police about ways in which they might respond and not be armed, if that means different kinds of personnel responding or what. Chief, do you want to speak to that at all? Like, are there different kinds? You go.
No, we haven't had any conversations about it. We have heard, parts of the public and on the internet and things like that where people say that. But I although this is a much deeper conversation, but the reality is us being armed is just really a part of our job. It's just a tool on our tool belt, just like a pen to write stuff, a paper to write stuff. We have different tools used for different items. And so for sworn officers, the issue is, are they prepared for what they could face or what they're called for? And that subject matter has to do with taking tools away from officers to deal with certain things. And based on what goes on in this country, or certainly what's going on still, I don't necessarily know if that's a tool that we can, I'd love to say that we can take it off our tool belt forever, but the reality is that there's still violence in this world. So
hey, Ruth,
that's all I can say about that now.
Were you thinking about specific kinds of calls?
Yeah, I guess it's just, the majority of my interactions with police, they're always armed, right? And, the majority of those have been things like traffic stops or, like things like that. But I'm also a white woman. The majority of interactions my friends have had where they have been stopped, and again, police are always armed, and they have been afraid. The gun isn't necessarily unholstered, but it is a perpetual threat. And, like, for example, I have a friend who's Indigenous. He doesn't live here anymore because, of course, we don't have affordable housing, but he grew up here. And he was walking home in a costume, like you do, because he's just into that kind of thing. And he was stopped, and it was cold out, and they just kind of questioned him for a really long time. And he asked to put his hands in his pockets. He was so cold, and they wouldn't let him. Stuff like that. And he was just really afraid. And they're armed. He's not. Things like that were really scary. It just seems like all of these instances, like, is a gun really necessary? You know what I mean? And a lot of the calls that I've recently, there was I looked up I was talking to a county commissioner about something, and he was just like, I don't know if I could ask people to not have guns for that situation. And I looked up the response, and it looks like there was like a SWAT response to that, which means that, they're scrambling a different response anyway, right? Like, or at least maybe I'm unfamiliar with your protocol and how you do things. Like, maybe there is tactical SWAT gear in every single vehicle that folks have, but it as I understood it, like, you have to go get SWAT gear and deploy a SWAT team, and that was to like an active shooter situation, or like someone had been shot. But in any case, like, it just seems like most of the time a gun isn't required. It makes people very fearful. It escalates the situation when it doesn't really need to. And, there are lots of situations in which it doesn't actually prevent the violence that we continue to cite cops needing these guns for.
Ruth, I don't mean to interrupt, but your time is up. And I
Sorry.
think this is definitely something that we can look more into and have a further discussion. I know that there are conversations going on, and it is a much bigger conversation that we would need to have. Fortunately, this week is NACOLS, so we'll have an opportunity to look and see what other agencies around the country are doing also for this type of question.
So that to say, Ruth, make sure that you keep staying in touch with us about this topic, because we will be talking about it more and trying to envision ways in which we might do this differently.
Yeah, and I appreciate being able to that this place exists, and I'll continue to listen to.
Thank you. We appreciate you, actually.
Great. We have one more caller we can check in on.
Okay.
Hello, caller. Hi.
Hi.
Would you like
my
to
name is-
participate in public comment?
Yes, please.
Great.
Am I
Please
on?
go ahead.
Go ahead,
Okay.
caller.
Hi there. Thank you for holding this conversation. My name is Sonia, and kind of to follow up on the previous question, I'm wondering what conversations have been had around decolonizing mindsets, and what conversations have happened around how Ann Arbor can lead the way in reforming relationships with police and communities. Heard a lot of what hasn't been had, but I would love to hear more about what kind of conversations have been had.
I missed the beginning part of your question. I heard the part about what kinds of conversations have been had around increasing trust between the police and the community, but I feel like you said something before that.
Yeah, that was essentially it. That and kind
Okay.
of how is the police community working to sort of decolonize the current mindset and have a new approach towards relationship building with the community?
So I think Chief Cox, you should weigh in on that. We have a piece in that too, in that we think about transparency and accountability as facilitating trust. And we hope that when the community feels confident that they know what the police are doing, and that if police are doing a great job, everybody can acknowledge that. And if they're not doing a great job, we can acknowledge that. And one of the things that we're doing is beginning to have more conversations directly with the police so that we can make sure we understand where they are and what they're doing, and how that impacts the public, and things that they like to do and ways in which they'd like to evolve. Like, for example, when Michelle was on the line, I don't know if it was clear, but the chief has been looking at revising that policy already and using some other models like San Francisco and other places to think about how we need to include trans people in language and in practice. And those things are important. And so we feel like we need to be a conduit in that way, but I know the police chief could speak more to sort of what things the police are doing to try to promote trust and overcome some of the distrust that exists in the community.
Well, thank you. So I've been here for about a year, so I can only speak to the past year. I know I've been all over Ann Arbor trying to meet with community groups and hear from them directly, from citizens directly, about what their fears are, what their anxieties are, and how we're doing as a police department and how we can do better. And most of the conversation I've had, overwhelmingly, the feedback I've received has been mostly positive for the most part. Building trust is really about having conversations with people and letting them get to know who you are and you getting to know who they are, and coming to an understanding just about many things in general. The feedback I've gotten for the most part in this past year has been relatively positive. It's been more recently that I've heard a lot more negative feedback, and it's really usually not related to Ann Arbor. It's usually related to more national things, in my humble opinion, about at least from the people that I've talked to. There's certainly been some incidents here that have certainly done some things as far as making trust more difficult. But I know we've been working really hard to reach out to citizens directly, to hear from them directly. Is that helpful? As far as I don't want to manipulate your meeting here,
Yeah,
but we're willing to sit down and talk to anyone at any time, anywhere about any issue for the most part. I welcome the conversation. So.
Great, thank you, Chief. Is there a way that's easy for people to kind of boil up those thoughts that's not through this phone call, like a box or an email or something?
If you want the police chief, yeah. If you want us, yes. And I think that's one of the things, we also go out into the community and we talk about what we do. We talk about police complaints, but we also talk about our bigger mission of trying to facilitate that trust. And so if you are ever interested in having us, talk to us, in a more less formal setting than this meeting, like 3 or 4 of us, we're always happy to do that. And you can email us at a2policeoversight@gmail.com. Anybody can do that anytime. We are always setting up community meetings to do that. And the chief will let you know how you can contact him.
And you would say that, hold on one second. Lieutenant Cervantes, are you on? What is our email address for the public?
I know that there's an email address that is taken off the internet, but I can give you my personal email address if you like.
Sure.
It's mcervantes@a2gov.org.
Actually, I do have that email address now, just to let you know. In general, we can get email. It's police@a2gov.org.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah, I just found if you Google contact Ann Arbor Police, the contact page comes up and it has that email and the general number and stuff like that as well.
Perfect.
That was perfect timing too.
Thank you so much, Sonia.
Thank you.
That's the end of our list of callers.
Okay. So you all have a copy of the minutes from June 16th, which was our last regular meeting, as well as a special meeting that we held on July 1st. Is there any discussion of those minutes, or is there a motion to approve them?
Just, Chairwoman?
Yes.
Jackson, on the minutes from the June 16, I think just a little bit of a typo. I think Commissioner Evans had chaired part of the meeting when you and Francis got reappointed.
Yes.
Just that change.
Sorry, I go off camera and it looks like I'm like totally gone, but I'm really just on the other side of the desk trying to get this binder so I can write that in there. Yeah. That is true because he made the motion because we could not as it regarded us. So.
Yeah, he presided over the reappointment of both of you.
And so where, on what page do you happen to have in front of you so I can make the change?
It's towards the end when both motions were carried. Just I think prior to the public comments, I think.
Oh, and it says that Commissioner Billups was acting chair, but it was really Commissioner Evans.
Correct.
I can note that and get that fixed for you if you'd like.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Othman, and thank you, Kelly. I think that's on page 3, Kelly. Yep. Any other good catches with the minutes? So is there a motion to approve the July 1st minutes and the July 16th minutes with the correction as noted?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 16 and July 1st.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Was that Jude?
Yep.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, thank you. I'm trying to be Denise and take notes at the same time. So we have some old business on the table, and it seems like a long time ago, but it was really just about a month ago. We have the mayor's resolution that he wrote on June 12th. I think it was presented at the June 15th meeting, if I am not mistaken. And he had a resolution of things that he wanted us to do. At the June 16th meeting, we discussed it and we indicated that in the future we would come to some resolution about what we wanted to do with it. I understand that we are not required to do anything with it. It was just referred back to us. And since then, we have put forth a resolution regarding the CBA, and we also will be producing a couple of other resolutions shortly, but we should discuss what we would like to do with the mayor's resolution. Options include nothing. Options include revisions. And of course, an option is to write other resolutions, original resolutions. Thoughts?
Well, originally, I guess the mayor and the sponsors of this asked for, reports of every 3 months and a final report after 18 months. I mean, so I believe this commission has some time to consider its response to this. It doesn't need to be done on the fly, I suppose. But yeah, it would be good to get a response back to council as to what ICPOC would like, whether it's just completely disregarded or to do whatever, but just an acknowledgement that it received it. But early on, I guess that's my only thought.
And my suspicion is the commissioners have been considering what they would like to do with it.
I thought this, Anand. I thought when we discussed this, we talked about this is an opportunity for us to revise, our responsibilities and look at what the task force had recommended and how can we, look at both and see if there's some changes and this opportunity we would like to make. That was one thing. The other thing is that we will attend the meeting of the city, maybe every 3 months we will still give a report, regardless with, so we are still in touch with the city and the city is in touch with us. And I think these are 2 points we have discussed and I thought we have kind of agreed on, if my memory served me well. I don't have in front of me what we have discussed and we agreed on. But I thought we said like this is an opportunity to look at what the task force responsibilities are and how can we make him, make ourselves more impactful or stronger as a commission.
You're right. We did talk about that, but did we talk about it in the context of the resolution that the mayor wrote? Are you suggesting like rewrite his resolution? Because I think his resolution was intended to specifically address
like a report. And I think we've already kind of amended it, Lisa, since we voted to have you start the city council meetings. You always share like your update. I feel like that was sort of organically pulled from the mayor's resolution to have more frequent check-ins from ICPOC.
Not really, because we are having a monthly check-in, and he suggested a written report every 3 months and then some recommendation at the end of 18 months. I think our position of coming to council every month was because it had been so difficult to do so before, but also because clearly police oversight is in the national view right now, and lots of citizens are interested in it, and that's an outlet for them also to understand what we're doing. But certainly the mayor's resolution can be revised if you wanted to, but that would really entail taking his resolution and literally revising it. I think everything we've done in the interim has been to create resolutions from scratch, which is a little bit different. So I guess the question on the table here is there anything we need to do specifically with his resolution? So for example, Anon, we might make a resolution based on some of the suggestions from the task force and say, these are things that we wish to be able to do. Right. But that wouldn't be revising the mayor's resolution. That would be something that we create from scratch. That would be ours, which I think we should be doing.
You know, for me personally, I don't care whether we call it the mayor resolution or our resolution. We look at that. We look at other things we want. And if there's something valuable in it, we take it. If there's something valuable in it, we don't take it. And we come with something that is, I don't care if ours end up new ideas plus some ideas of the mayor. I'm not hung up on that as much as, you know, this is an opportunity for us as a commission to revise our work, what we did in the last year or a year and a half, look at our charter and see what is in it like we would like to change now that we are practicing, because they give you something and say, this is your responsibility, this is your limitation, and you go along with it because you haven't practiced what does it mean to be a commission. Also, we, for good or bad, we were soon, you know, the protests have happened and they brought a lot of attention to the police. So we can take all that together and we look at and come up with something that we all agree on. You know, if we end up picking up a couple items that the mayor suggested, fine. And if there's nothing, that's also fine. Right. If more than two is good, you know, good is good. It doesn't matter where it's coming from.
Right. I totally agree. But my understanding is that council is to some degree waiting to see what we are going to do specifically with his recommendations. And so we could say to council, we are taking them into consideration and might incorporate some of these ideas into a subsequent document. We could say that we would like to take on his resolution on the face of it. So we can do exactly what you're saying, but I think that what our liaisons are saying is that council kind of wants to hear from us one way or another what we're going to do with these specific pieces that the mayor said, not each one by one, but just to get a sense from us that, you know, they would report back to council that, you know, ICPOC has taken them under advisement and they will likely come back with some writing that may or may not incorporate some of these things.
We can tell them that.
Okay.
You know, we're looking at it and we're looking at other things and we will, maybe it'll be a good idea if we give them a deadline, you know, you expect to hear from us by then, because that will also put us to sit down and because so many things come and you tend to, you know, always address what come in front of you. And we're all, you know, so if we give them and give ourselves a deadline and then we will sit down and handle it.
Jude, Commissioner Walton.
It is fine. I think one of the things that's a difference to me between the resolution that came from the mayor and in the ways we're talking about is the resolution very clearly is talking about the report and the review. And it seems to be a distinct time-limited 18-month process to do these separate review parts and come back with a review to do it. And I do remember, you know, some of our early reactions, and I think that you, Dr. Jackson, reflected this, was, you know, saying all of these things are kind of within the purview of what the commission is here to do anyway, but on an ongoing basis. So I wonder if that might be part of the difference and part of the sort of disconnect is that we look at this as just the work that we are here to do, and what's come forward from the mayor and or council seems to be a more discrete thing. And so I can see why there's more of a, you know, waiting for a response because there's a concrete specific request within there as opposed to our ongoing work.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this? Oh, Commissioner, not Commissioner, Councilman from Lowry.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Yeah, I mean, piggyback on what Commissioner Walton just said, a lot of what this is being called out for here is ongoing work that this commission will continue to do and always do. And I think just getting a formal response to council in a reasonable time frame, just line by line, just this is ongoing, you know, just in response to these 9 different resolve clauses, just to give a formal, respectful response to the body. And, you know, much of it, of course, like I said earlier, and Commissioner Walton talked about it, this is going to ongoing and continuous. So there's no sunset to much of this.
So do you think it might be helpful then if we draft something that sort of takes these, what are they, 7? Oh, no, 9. I see, and you did say 9. Resolve clauses and indicate this is something on which we'll continue to work on in perpetuity. This is something that we are currently working on. This is something that we're not thinking about working on. Is that what you were thinking?
I know my colleague Jane wants to jump in and say something.
Go ahead.
You can add something maybe.
You can answer, and then if you want, and then Council Member Lum can go, whatever you want. Go.
I'm done. I'm good.
Okay. Go ahead.
Actually, I was headed down the same path as Councilmember Remlawi. Yeah, so there's 8 resolve clauses, and you can look at each one of these as sort of a to-do. And I do think if you could create sort of a, I don't know, a prioritization framework of sorts that ICPOC recommends, because there's no prioritization to any of these. It is a, you know, the requests here are fairly significant, and as Councilman Ramlawi also said, there are things here that ICPOC is doing sort of routinely, but council, I don't think, may be aware of that. So, and yes, and the last resolve, of course, was that, you know, so do all these things and then give us this report in 18 months' time. And I think if you had created a time frame, so figure out what the deliverables are that ICPOC determines are, you know, the priority items, and then provide the timeline for delivering on those things. I don't think that this 18-month report, I think that's very fluid, and I don't think you should see that as a, you know, necessarily an assignment written in stone. And Councilman Lowry, you can correct me on this.
And reject any part you don't want to. I mean, if you feel that part is completely out of line, it doesn't deserve, you know, say you refuse to accept that resolve clause. This is something that we don't accept.
And how about the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I mean, I just like pulling one of these off, you know, that you make, you've studied the budget. I know, Jude, certainly, and you've spent a lot of time on that, and you did it in concert with the city's budget priority, you know, setting process.
And can I just clarify here? I have not seen or been privy to any part of the AAPD's budget, which this is what this calls for, correct? ICPOC's budget, absolutely. We created that and everything, but I thought that this was calling for a review of the city's budget, particular
and
focus
the police
on
officers.
AAPDs. I just want to be very clear publicly. I have never seen AAPD's budget, and to my knowledge, that's one part that I'm not sure was part of our original, charter for this. I'm not necessarily saying that we wouldn't be happy to, and in fact, perhaps excited to at times. But I just want to be very clear with what we have done and what we haven't done so far, and what we've had access to and what we haven't.
Agreed, because I've been working on our budget with Commissioner Walton, but not the police budget. Commissioner Tadoro Hargraves.
Right. I see this as something that the police chief frankly develops. Right.
I don't know that we get to do that.
I think that this goes kind of what the council members are referring to goes with, Lisa, the working document that we have listed at the bottom of our agenda. And I think for purposes of moving our meeting along, because I know our next item, our emergency response contingency plan is going to have a lot of discussion too. But we can take apart that budget or that resolution. The finance item is already on that task list, that working document that we were putting together. So perhaps we add that and then formally send that around and share that with everybody. And again, it's on the agenda for later on in the meeting, but we could talk in more detail about that. But I think that with the way that we are functioning, that's the best way to do it for us, is exactly what the council members are saying. Break down each item into a task, and then we address them as we do by the priority we set, and then we can update council regularly from there.
And I assume council members Ramlawi and Lum, that there is no fixed written format by which we need to respond to you all.
Correct.
Okay. So we can make it clear and concise. I just wanted to make sure we're not bound by any specific format.
It's
okay.
It's fluid. It's just, you know.
Okay. So my suggestion then would be, and I can certainly say this on August 3rd, and you guys can take it back before then, if you meet before then, that we are currently working on it, and we will come to council shortly, and maybe we can set an internal deadline for ourselves and report on it to you guys at the first meeting of the month in September. We may need to call a special working session, depending on how this goes, to sort of address these things. We can work on some drafts and then perhaps call a working session to vote on something, and maybe we can get it to you. Our goal will be to try to finish up so that you guys can have it maybe by that first meeting in September. Because I know we won't make your August 3rd meeting, but
August 6th actually. So is the
I'm so sorry.
Meeting. No, it's okay because of the election. It's August 6th.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's not a Monday. Okay.
It's a lot of work.
It's a
All
Thursday.
right, so that's fine.
And I just think in general, you should not feel like you are under the gun to meet some, deadline, any particular deadline. But but by reporting out and conveying, here are the priorities that ICPOC identified, and here's the time frame for for completing X, Y, and Z kind of thing. I think that satisfies the information communication that you'll be doing going forward.
Okay, so when we will also bring this up again. We will revisit it again. We'll decide internally if we need to have a special meeting or a working session to work on these points, and we'll do some internal conversing about that. And we'll probably get some public feedback on a couple of these as well. Is that amenable to everyone?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Because I don't think we're prepared to give a response, but I did want to make sure we addressed it tonight since it was at our last meeting. Okay. So the first order of new business is the emergency response contingency plan, and I will put it up on my screen. This and Commissioners Birch and Walton can discuss this in depth because this is their baby. I just want to make sure I have the right version up.
Do you want me to give the context about this, Lisa?
That would be perfect. Can you guys see this on your screens now?
Yes.
A Word document?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So I had approached Lisa like late last year, the start of this year, to ask, hey, if there is another use of deadly force or some sort of serious incident with the Ann Arbor Police Department, is there a plan in place on sort of what happens in the immediate aftermath as far as communication between ICPOC and the police department? And Lisa shared with me that there wasn't yet a plan established. And since I had expressed interest in it, she had assigned myself and Jude to formulate this contingency plan. And Jude is definitely welcome to also contribute to this. But essentially, Jude and I met. Each of us did lots of research just within other oversight commissions across the country as far as what their plans were. And then it was really important to communicate what we were thinking to the police chief. And so last week we met with Chief Cox about all this to get his feedback to see what was feasible. Did this make sense? Regarding just sort of transparency and streamlined communication, recognizing that, God forbid if this were to occur, sort of it will be chaos in the moment. And so it'll be really crucial to have this policy implemented in place for not only folks on the current commission, but any sort of following thereafter us. And that this is pretty standard across oversight commissions in the country. So.
And I just wanted to give you guys some feedback. I was communicating with the city attorney, Stephen Postma, this afternoon, and they got a chance to look at the draft that's on your screen, and they actually do not have any more additions, corrections, revisions that they want to make to this now. So they are now finished with it. I know there was some back and forth, and they were able to contribute to this. And one of the, and so as we go forward, you can just go forward with that in mind, that they feel like they have made their contributions to this.
I don't know if Jude kind of wanted to walk through the purpose or how folks wanted us to tackle this. I'd say Jude had really tackled that purpose and the scope, and I had fleshed out the action steps. So if folks have any specific questions about either of those, that's how that kind of was delegated.
Just one quick question. Is this, I thought that Anand had made a couple of proposed changes in the purpose section.
I didn't change them.
Okay.
I didn't change them. I just, and I can bring them up. Can you guys see my email? Hold on. Can you guys see my email right now?
No, we just see the Word document.
Okay, perfect. I'll bring up Anand's.
I don't think that it's wording changes in the purpose, which I actually really like the changes. I don't think it's anything that city attorney's office, but I mean it's not changing any of the actual content or process.
One of them, it was a matter of language. I thought to make it clearer. Maybe if you disagree, it's not a big problem, but language. The other thing was about timing. Something I cannot scroll in this. Maybe I can open it in my own.
Can you see it now? Can you see the one with red in it now?
No, we're still on the original.
Okay. That I have two screens right now, so let me share differently.
Yeah, Anand, I can speak to the timeline unless.
No, please.
Yeah, it was about the 2 weeks after the deadly force situation.
Right. Can you see it now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I had landed there only because I wanted to provide enough time to gather as much information as possible before meeting with the public, and really acknowledging that there's probably not too much we would be able to share about any specific investigation, but just enough time for us to communicate as a commission, check in with the chief as much as we could. I thought 2 weeks was a reasonable grace period, thinking about business days and weekends and maybe even a holiday. But of course, all this language is flexible.
Yeah. So one of them about the action steps, you have one and then you have A. There's no B, but there's A, which is, you say within 4 hours, then 24 hours may be more practical time. So when you finalize the draft, maybe we should do one of the two or keep them like that. It just sounded a little bit strange to me.
I think that was a point from the city attorney's office, and what it is optimally we'd like to be notified within 4 hours. There is some understanding that in some cases, and Chief Cox, if you could weigh in on what these exigent circumstances might be, that we might not be notified for 24 hours. Could you possibly explain that?
Sure. What, not possessing the crystal ball, I can try to give you some generic things. So investigations that might be going on ongoing active crime scenes. When I say active, like the event is still going on. I mean, there's multiple, events that might be actually happening where, I can't do it because I'm in the middle of doing the job, so to speak. And then when I stop actively doing the job, then I can absolutely make some calls and information sharing, so to speak, as far as the event occurring. And so we don't want to, not having that crystal ball I talked about. I don't want to, make a promise that we end up breaking just because of the circumstances. So I just want to go into it with very open or transparent, statement that, I will get back to you as soon as practically possible. But the reality is, if a scene is ongoing and under the circumstances, it might be longer than what we put up here. So does that help? Helpful as far as an explanation?
Helpful.
Or are you looking for more specifics?
As a document, I don't think, we should either say, between 4 hours and 24 hours or something. But the language is the way 24 hours may be more practicable time, It's maybe, it's to me, it's vague, like 4 and 24, and maybe it's more practicable. It is, I don't know, the concept of practicable is practicably possible under the circumstances. It just doesn't,
I think they were trying to use it in the sense of practicable, like what might be actually possible in the actual practice. There may be something that is cut and dried in which we could be notified 4 hours after it happened, but in actual practice, there might be something ongoing such that we wouldn't be notified until 24.
Okay. So that was one. And the other thing is, like, if somebody get killed, for example, and you tell the community you won't answer, and you tell them we'll meet with you in 2 weeks, I don't think that's, they might be at the door of the police demonstrating, or in front of the city council.
Well, I think that one number 3 says within 72 hours.
Within number 6 say within 2 weeks a community forum meeting is held to the public to ask question of the commission.
So there's 2 different meetings. The
number 3
pulls out, that within 72 hours the commission will convene, and because of Open Meetings Act, that means that must be communicated to the public with 48 hours notice. So basically, we're calling the meeting that first day. Or we're setting the meeting time that first day, and also then the public has the opportunity to attend, whether it's virtually like this or whether it would be in person. So it's not like we're saying there would be nothing until 2 weeks out. We're just basically saying we can guarantee that we can meet, and then within 2 weeks there can be something that can be more of a community forum dialogue situation that we would have as well.
Where we might have a meeting that's that's mostly the time is focused on people asking questions. However, don't forget that whenever we convene a meeting, we usually have a public forum in it anyway. So it is not to preclude that happening within 72 hours. I saw Councilwoman Lam had her hand up, and then Ramlawi, although my screen is abbreviated. So if there's anybody after Ali, please let me know.
Okay, thanks. So this is, I generally like to hold back here on making any suggestions, but because this is your bailiwick. But on 1A, I do think it needs to be clarified. I would agree. And what I'm hearing from the chief and all of you, and I agree with the good points Anand made, it would be helpful. Back to 1A. There you go. Sorry.
Got
it. That 4 hours be changed to within 24 hours. To within 24 hours. And I think what you mean to say, as soon as is practically possible under the circumstances, period. And then you don't need that bullet point.
You need to be.
So just simply say within 24 hours, or as soon as is practically possible.
I thought that was language that came back from the city, so I wasn't sure if that had a specific legal meaning.
See, I'm looking at an exchange here between, Dr. Jackson and the city attorney's office. I just printed, that, and their words were, as soon as is practically possible under the circumstances. But Jude, you're the Cambridge English grad.
I'm literature, not language, so it's all good.
And I just want to confirm too, Chief Cox, you provided guidance on all of these time frames, right?
Chief Cox.
Yes. So I'll give you an example. You asked me about an example. During the marathon bombing, I didn't go home for the first 48 hours. When I say over, I go to sleep for 48 hours. And I was actively working. I mean, really actively working. So sometimes when an event occurs, you are involved with the event, and that is the most important thing going on.
I think we lost it.
And and when you get time or whatever the deal is, then that's when you can do it. But we don't know what the time frame is. That's why the importance of under the circumstances is very, very important, because each circumstance is different. And so what 4 hours seems like a very long time, but when you're in an active scene, 4 hours will go by in a blink of an eye. And and then so that's the only thing that I would say. As long as it's something's related to understanding the circumstances, and if the circumstances dictated that you're able to at least listen and hear me out on what those circumstances are, right? And I can tell you that after the fact. But we don't want to promise something and then an event takes place and it looks as though we're breaking a promise when it's really about us. We're just working, we're doing the job, and just didn't have time to stop doing the job to send out notice. But we will do everything possible to make sure it happens. So
I think I can, I'm looking at the city attorney's language, and I think I can get rid of that A part, but Jude and Sarah and anyone else, I would appreciate your thinking about this 4 to 24 hours thing. If it just needs to say within 24 hours, or do you want some emphasis on the short end of that as well?
I appreciate.
Let's say
only because
let Sarah go, and then Anan, and then Jude.
Yeah, I appreciate the short end only because there also isn't any language connecting, like hearing from the chief personally. Like conversation was had that, kind of whoever within the department can notify us, whether it's some sort of dispatch or if there are ways that they notify the press. Definitely don't want to commit to personally hearing from the chief when an incident occurs. We're here to help him and the department do their job easier and safer within the community. We don't want to impede any sort of investigation or cause any barriers that would cause further harm for officers or the community at large.
Anan?
I have two things. Like if, let's say in Ann Arbor, somebody got shot by the police, just for the sake of argument, I think we would hear about it on the news way before 24 hours. So it's not like just to inform us, like you want somebody from the police to call Lisa, but Lisa already knows because it's on the news. So it's not a matter of informing, and I don't know how to articulate it. It's more than informing, or telling them what happened or explaining, because we will hear about it. Somebody died in Minneapolis and we hear about it within 2 hours. I mean, whether you are head of a commission or not. So there should be the police contact the commission. The chair of the EPCOC is notified within 24 hours. Notified, you already know. So it's like for me, if there's something missing in there, like maybe the police will contact the chair to tell them what? To tell them that somebody was shot, and you'll say, well, I already know, I heard it on the news. I mean, that's how it come across.
Okay.
And
so
maybe,
I made a revision. What do you think? Are we getting closer to what you're talking about?
Notify. It's notified.
Jude, go ahead while Anan is reading.
Well, I just want to say, I think there we're starting to get really kind of a bit blurry between 1 and 2. Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think part of the intent here, one of the things with number 1 was what we didn't want to have happen was to have the chair of ICPOC find out on the news, albeit by getting 17 texts coming in of people, or, you know, a call from a reporter saying, hey, this incident happened, what's your response, and being caught by surprise. So the intent for that was to have, and just as Sarah was just saying, you know, it doesn't have to be the chief. It doesn't have to be right now, I've got to take 2 hours out from dealing with this incident to go update. It really was making sure that there was very fast notification just to be aware something has happened. Here's perhaps the basics, but just to get that out. Point 2 is the within 48 hours, and that is saying that the chair and vice chair will be meeting with the police. And that really, I think, is where we felt the reasonable point was to be able to have that kind of more detailed, okay, here's everything I can tell you right now, here's what's going on, and really sort of do that. I do understand the drive to want it to have be as soon as possible. For number 1, I'd like to suggest maybe is notified ideally within 4 hours, right? To have that connotation out there that, again, this is just notification. It doesn't say who, it doesn't say the level of detail. It's really just that communication sharing. And then that second part comes in on number 2.
I agree. If the detail is coming in the 48-hour meeting, then the point 1 is just for the commissioners to be notified and say, hey, this has happened. And in that case, I would cut it down instead of from 4 to 24. I would say within 4 to 12 hours, because it's just a notification. And as Commissioner Anana said, you know, we're going to hear about it on the news at some point. And since it's not necessarily the chief, it's any of the assistant chiefs or someone else saying, hey, this has happened. We're in the middle of the throes of the investigation. We'll notify you when we can do the 48-hour meeting. You know, I think it keep that down.
Keith, do you have any ideas about how to prevent us from hearing about this first on the news?
No, I don't. Sorry.
No, I mean, I don't control the news. Don't have the ability to do that. I will say that, you know, if an event like that were to occur, it would be newsworthy. There's no doubt about that. But remember that, you know, so this is our job. So our first duty is to investigate what's going on. Remember, and I know you're very important. I understand that, but that's our first duty. And so, what is our duty? To make sure we investigate, make sure, you know, that all the appropriate resources are being used. And so, it's hard to put a time frame on some of that stuff. Now, the reality is, I can look at this and say it is highly likely that you will be notified within 4 hours of an event happening, right? But we're talking about putting something in a document or whatever, and I don't want to overpromise and underperform. So, you know, that being said, that's why the question comes in, you know, with when it's in writing.
We're not as important as the mayor, obviously, but does somebody have to call the mayor in like 5 minutes? Oh crap, we got to call the mayor. No. Does that happen?
No. So in my food chain, the city manager is in my food chain. The mayor and obviously the head of the city council is not in that sense.
Okay, so when do you have to tell the city manager?
I would not be calling the mayor.
When do you have to call the city manager?
I don't. There's no written agreement. There's it's not within 12 or 24 hours. It's under the circumstances when I would get an opportunity. Yes.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Yes.
I'm just wondering now, do we agree that the A doesn't need to be there at all? So I
think so. Wait a minute. Let me do something. I'm multitasking. I'm trying to make changes on another document. I think we can get rid of the A. I think if we change this to or as soon as is
possible. Why do you need practically at all? Why don't you just say, or as soon after the incident as is possible under the circumstances? And I would take out the 212. Why do you need that? Within 4 hours, or as soon after the incident as is possible under the circumstances. That seems to me to be clear, and also it gives some leeway to what the chief is saying, that under certain circumstances it might not be possible, but you're expecting to be notified in 4 hours or as soon after the incident as is possible under the circumstances. I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
You're the only one here who's worked in the city attorney's office. So
well,
it was worth more than 2 cents.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think
it totally works for me, and I think you're right. With that, we can take out the A, which I think really was just trying to define the practically possible.
Yeah. Or as soon.
That was in there because the attorney's office had that was their recommendation.
Yeah, they'll be okay.
The practically.
I mean, what does that mean? What does that mean? It's
an attorney. This came from an attorney, so.
What does practically possible mean?
Okay, so let me switch. Okay, wait, I'll do it on here. So it said the chair of ICPOC is notified with ideally. Do you want the ideally in there, people?
No.
No? Within 4 hours that a deadly force incident has occurred, or as soon after the incident as is possible under the circumstances. And that gives the chief the flexibility to say it was not possible to tell you until 24 hours.
Beautiful.
Councilwoman Lum.
So just quickly, I will just say that there are no rules like this for notifying council, but I know that the chief and the city administrator do their best to notify us when there is a serious incident. And we get notified, it's come in various shapes and forms from different people. Chief Cox's predecessor, it often came from Chief Faunus. Prior to that, it seemed to come from the city administrator, but there was never any sort of, you got established rule of requirement for when we had to be notified. And I would say too that in this day and age, it is not unusual to read about stuff, in MLive first, and then later, recently the stabbing at Liberty Plaza, found out about that through the MLive article. And, I think we recognize that the police are just doing their, not just, but they're busy, doing their jobs. And so,
we want to be higher on the food chain than that, though.
Okay.
That's what we want.
Okay. But I want to make sure that the chief is okay here with this language is now proposed, because, he doesn't want to overpromise and underdeliver, I think is what he said. So
do you feel like, Chief, that you are as soon after the incident as is possible under the circumstances? Is that giving you enough flexibility to do what you need to do?
As long as circumstances are taken into account on why, if it has to go over, that's the important thing. I just don't, I'm trying to be transparent here. And
I want to, can I use the word, I would like to use the word given the circumstances. Is that okay with people instead of under the circumstances? That is my grammarian mother coming out of me.
Sure.
You all don't care? Okay. So I'm trying to make a nice clean one on another page for you guys. Okay, and then we don't have to have and I think we resolved this 2 weeks thing.
Right. It is resolved. Yes.
Okay, thank you. These I think got resolved, and then this was Anand. These were suggestions about
just language.
Okay.
It was confusing. I had to read the sentence, like for me, 2-3 times, both, and this. So I cut the sentence. First one was too large, and then that, and this is never more. I never more. So I said this is especially important when a serious incident. It's just language, actually. which make it a little bit easier to read. But if people find the old languages okay, it's okay with me.
I was thinking about something. I think one of the things you did here at the end was you just changed the order, and I would like to do the, I was thinking about that too, because temporally information has to be shared with ICPOC before the community has a public forum space. And so if we could switch those around, that would be helpful.
I did.
Yeah,
is that okay,
they are in
Jude,
the
Sarah?
updated version. Yeah, all these changes are fine by me.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on language here or elsewhere?
I have a couple of things.
Sure.
On number 2 of the scope, the admission to hospital, and you have, I would take the admission to hospital following release from custody or detention, and then you have 2 brackets, not including outpatient care. Because if you leave that part following release from custody or detention, it's like admission to hospital, and then the meaning or the importance will be diluted if you keep it together in between brackets.
Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to stop sharing. I think there's 2 of these. So I think the first one, they wanted to say that if the person was released.
This too meant if when the police got somewhere and someone was already hurt, not by the fault of the police, the language was supposed to prevent like the Liberty Plaza stabbing, like that wasn't at the hands of the police. So that was like an admission to the hospital that wasn't as a result of some sort of
so maybe hold on a second. So maybe it's not including. So maybe that's what we should say there, right? If admission to hospital is not due to an encounter with the police?
No, there is another, this was part of what I researched, and this was some of the stuff that I took from the Nova Scotia Oversight. They've specifically used this language in part so that if somebody is in custody or detained and then released from care and then goes to, say, urgent care or something and says, my arm is sprained, that would automatically trigger serious incident. So here there is a level that's put in, which is the bar is you actually have to be admitted into hospital. So just merely going to seek care, right,
or
seeking care for a small, graze on your knee or something, that would not rise up to the bar of a serious incident.
Okay.
And that is actually quite intentional language from where I took it from.
That makes sense to me now that you've explained it. Mohammed, what do you think?
All what I'm saying is that because it's included the admission to hospital, and then have a quotation over here or bracket, not including outpatient care following release from custody or detention. It's like, my thing is, if we split that into admission to hospital following release from custody or detention, and then just to indicate bracket, not including outpatient care.
But it does have to be, it's any admission to hospital. So if there is an incident that happens, say, while the police force are responding, and during the course of that response, for whatever reason, in whatever way, somebody is injured or harmed and then taken to the hospital, this would include that. But I think the way you just described it would not. And we definitely would want somebody who was sent to hospital after an encounter in that circumstances to be included. I am not a lawyer, so anybody who's a lawyer or has that background, please feel free and chime in if I'm misrepresenting this, but that's my understanding.
No, I think you're making a distinction that we would not want to consider it a serious incident if somebody did not require hospitalization, but later decided they might, that's not as serious as what you're saying if they were injured on the scene and thus required hospitalization.
Well, if somebody was released from custody and went to, you know, seek medical care because their stomach hurt, and they were then told, we're admitting you have this injury, that still is included in here. So you do want to allow for somebody being able to leave custody or detention, seek medical care, and if they're admitted to hospital, then that absolutely could be something.
Okay. And I have number 6. I think you were talking about the meeting. Item number 6.
This one?
Yeah. And,
Okay.
and for me, what I'm saying that probably if we say it's ICPOC regular or special meeting, because one of the things that might happen is our meeting over here to invite the public and to inform the public could happen at the time when we have our regular meeting. And if not, we can probably have special meeting. So that would take away the 2 weeks, within 2 weeks, because within 2 weeks, we might have our regular meeting, or we could have special meeting.
Oh, how would you reword that one?
Okay. I think the other form did not indicate within 2 weeks. Community forum meeting is held for public to ask questions. I would say
Can I just say something real quick here? I apologize for interrupting. That keep in mind that there is an 18-hour requirement notice for meetings. So as these meetings are being contemplated, times and such, do know that it does require 18-hour notice.
Correct, and
not just with this, but the earlier meetings that were listed here, and number 3 especially. Just know that it's going to require 18-hour notice. The public, just a reminder.
Why don't we say ICPOC community forum, regular or special meeting to be held to inform the public or for the public to ask questions.
You know what? I'm just wondering. Jude and Sarah, I'm wondering about the intent of this one, because within 72 hours, if we convene a meeting, would we not have accomplished the ability for the public to ask questions of the? Could you amend number 3 to say that the commission will convene and hold a special meeting in compliance with the Michigan Open Meetings Act that includes a public forum? Could that be accomplished by doing that in 3, or were you guys thinking something different?
I think for me, it was like, if within 72 hours, I know that the commission would be available and able to meet and, of course, invite the public. And then the point 6 was to ensure that, okay, now there's, probably been discussions, it's been made aware, and that was just like giving folks more time to potentially attend like a further forum/meeting.
So if something happened in 72 hours, we were meeting, perhaps within 2 weeks, things might have developed such that another meeting might be appropriate? Yeah. Because I think we've already been in a situation like that, where at 72 hours, we could have said some things, but 2 weeks later, we could have said some different things.
Mm-hmm. I think the acknowledgement there was in 72 hours, it is unlikely we will have any, potentially any substantial information, and it would be very, very preliminary and quite possibly not shareable anyway. So
okay,
2 weeks, hopefully it would be able to be a different circumstance.
okay. Ali, I saw you. Were you waving at me?
I just wanted to remind folks that, you know, you can always convene special meetings whenever in the calendar, you know, doesn't necessarily need to be codified. It's an ability that this commission has and on an ongoing basis. So just know that I'm sure you all do, but just reminding that meetings can be convened, you know, regular, you know, special meetings throughout, but I don't want to impede the conversation that's going on here.
I think it's mostly just because we wanted to be able to have the community know what to expect as well. It's not just about between, you know, ICPOC and the police. It's also so that there is, you know, there don't have to be as many questions for the community if they can go on our site and see, okay, here's the policy of how this should be handled. And I think that would just help potentially. Sorry.
Got you.
So I think that then what you're saying is, within 2 weeks of the incident, we will convene another meeting consistent with the Open Meetings Act to further discuss the issue, because we always do public forum anyway.
Right. And it seemed like when there's an issue in the community occurring, that one meeting really isn't enough like time or space for folks to feel heard and seen, and that they are a part of the conversation that's affecting, you know, themselves and their neighbors. So
there may be wording here to get back to what Mohammed was saying, where it could be that where you just had, will convene an additional community or an additional meeting if necessary. And then that way, if there's already a meeting planned in the next couple of weeks, exactly as he was saying before, it can be the same thing. Or if we need an additional one because the timing doesn't work out, it can be that way.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So within 2 weeks, the commission will convene an additional meeting in compliance with the Open Meetings Act if necessary, because it could be that our meeting might fall then anyway.
Correct.
And then, okay. So, perfect. Thank you. More comments, thoughts? I'm not trying to rush anybody, but boy, we have like 9 million more things on here.
I'll just say, and I think just given like the current national discourse, just having a really strong plan in place, reassuring the community, like there is going to be, you know, a way for you to be heard by the folks in charge that matter and that are making these decisions is what's important, so that, you know, just to mitigate any tension of people feeling like they don't have a voice or they're not going to be heard if something this serious were to occur again. So,
but I think when you were saying that it's important for the community to know what to expect, I think that is critically important. And you all are the ones who have thought about this the most. I'm not stopping sharing. I'm actually just switching sharing. Sorry, because I was trying to make a clean copy at the same time. And so if you would read over this purpose, I tried to reword it. I did make a couple grammar changes from the other, but I largely rearranged it in the way Anand had suggested. But I also, so I don't, if you would like to peruse this, and then we can go through and see if we incorporated everybody's comments. Chief, this part does not, I guess the part that impacts the chief the most was the part we worked on first. So, but I'll scroll down to that part in a second. But is this purpose okay now?
Yeah, looks good to me.
Yeah.
Whoops, see, that's grammar. You don't need that. Information is shared, the community has a public space, both should happen. Okay, so then this was okay because you guys explained why that was the way it was. And then action steps, or as soon after the incident is possible given the circumstances, and that gives the chief the flexibility. He might not be able to talk to us for 72 hours, but that will be as soon as is possible given the circumstances.
And also it doesn't have to be the chief.
Right, that's right. It could be dispatch.
Yeah.
It could be anyone. All right, thank you. Within 48 hours, within 72 hours, the commission will communicate. I did the at or after because I think generally we communicate at a meeting. I know that was me changing that. And the commission is able to view when legally permissible, and within 2 weeks we'll convene an additional meeting when, I'll just say when necessary, not if. Is that better?
Yeah, I think the only thing is the language from the second half of number 1 in the first part should also be repeated in this second part.
As soon as possible.
Yeah.
For the chief, for the meeting with the chief.
Yeah, it's just
in 48 hours.
has a longer time frame on it, but.
Or as soon as is possible, given the circumstances, the chair and vice chair will meet with the chief to believe. Is that better?
No, I'm sorry. In the next section down, we just want to mirror number 1 for the deadly force and number 1 for serious incident.
Oh. Okay.
The only difference is it's a longer time frame on the second one.
Okay, so okay, got it. Hold on, let me just.
Yes, so it's just after the comma changes.
Got it. Okay, now why is this making a 7? This should not be a 7. That's all right. I can fix that part. Sorry, guys. So it should be 1 through 6. Is there another part I should scroll to so you guys can see it?
I wonder why on since the first 2 points on both sections kind of mirror each other language wise, if the last action step 6 for both should be more mirroring of each other. I'm not sure why 6 on the second part looks so different.
I think so, the second part, it wouldn't necessarily be within 2 weeks. It would just be whenever the next meeting was.
Okay.
That's what we had.
Sorry, I'm just doing this because it's not numbering correctly. But I will fix that. So these are, right. So this is the meeting following the review. And so I assume that's what you wanted, the next regularly scheduled meeting, right?
Okay.
I didn't change that. That was y'all.
Okay. Just want to clarify.
All right. So does this look okay to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen because I can't see all of you. Okay, now I can see all of you. Chief, were you able to, you saw the changes and stuff? You were fine? I know it was really the one you were caring about is as possible given the circumstances. What is that face?
No, I was just saying that's as long as that's in there, that's, you know.
You want me to put it in bold, don't you? Like italics and stuff? I just want to, you know. You like a red, maybe? Like,
I want to manage expectations. That's all. It's about, you know.
Like really big and stuff? Okay. All right. I promise it is in there, and I think it is possible given the circumstances, you know.
What if it's...
Go.
So hypothetically, okay. So we know what it says now. What if the circumstances mean, you know, chief can't get to you and say, you know, I don't know, 30 hours.
It's not the chief, though.
Or anybody, okay.
He should be able to call somebody, like, you know, he should be able to call parking enforcement and tell them to call us.
So, you know, I mentioned about the crystal ball part, and having lived through a pretty horrific event, you know, when I say the marathon bombing, every person in the police department was working.
Was busy.
Right. Yeah, every single person. So I know it. You know, you never know what the circumstances are. I just don't want to. Having lived through things before, that's why I'm very.
Well, I think that is given the circumstances, right? If you are all busy, then you cannot call us until a week. But I mean,
that's why it's highly likely there will not be any issues with any of this. But I just like to say that I don't have that crystal ball in.
Francis, and then Jane. Go, Francis.
I think that a lot of this too is going to be over time as we continue to build relationships with the, you know, Lieutenant Dortch and everyone, that when they hear something, even if it's just a quick text saying, "Hey, we've had an incident, heads up." You know, I think those are the biggest things, because PD is going to be responding, but everybody else is going to have the opportunity to call the press and get Ryan Stanton out there and you know, get it up. We're going to hear about it on our Twitter before, you know, we get a follow up. So the question is you know, whether or not a deputy chief or somebody says very quickly, you know, "Oh, let's get ICPOC a heads up, it's coming," and that's all it's going to say. It's on, basically, and we know that we'll hear more once the investigation starts moving,
or is over, because we understand there are details that cannot be shared until an investigation is complete. I think given the circumstances gives you that out. I also think if you are all hands on deck, you have a much smaller police force here than you had in Boston. If something awful happens here, it will probably be all hands on deck. Plus, you might have to recruit the football team to help you and the fire department and whomever else. And we understand that. And I think that given the circumstances means you don't have time to notify us, then that's a real thing. And I do think that given the circumstances means that, you know, that should be clear. If something awful happens and we hear about it on Twitter, because we might first, we understand that somebody will shoot us a text or somebody will give us a call or something, you know, when they're able. But we, you know, if they are doing something like, you know, saving lives, we prefer that they go ahead and save lives and not text us.
Again, it is highly likely that we will contact you far faster than what you've even gotten written down here. That's all.
It's fine.
I get superstitious too. I don't like that crystal ball. I don't like to whatever. And so.
Okay. Well, I am not superstitious, and I actually had a conversation with Tom Crawford about some of this stuff before the pandemic hit. And when it hit, he called me and he was like, "Oh my God, do you have a crystal ball, Lisa? Why were you talking about this?" So, Jane, did you have a question still, or are you good?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood what the, you know, how senior the person is the expectation that you hear from. It sounds like it could be anyone in our police department, and the method of communication, whether you were expecting a personal call or it could be a tweet, an email, whatever.
Could be whatever, notified.
Just notify could be anything and by anyone in the police department.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I do think there's an understanding with notified that it's not just a general tweet, that there is a specific reach out to make sure that the chair or at least one other member of the commission has been notified.
Formally notified?
It doesn't necessarily have to be formal, because it doesn't need to hit certain criteria or whatever. Literally anything from, you know, dispatch sending a text to a phone call from the chief directly to the chair. I mean, it's literally, it's just about making just if we we're running out of time, and I don't know that we need this level of wordsmithing. You could put in any direct or non-public, but I don't think it needs it. I think there's enough of the understanding of the spirit between all parties of what we're aiming for, when circumstances may mean it's not possible in our ideal goal, and when we can overachieve with that. I honestly think we can proceed with this I don't want to speak just for Sarah as well, but to my mind, I think we're reaching the spirit of what we wanted to put in place.
Also, one of the advantages of doing this on Zoom is that this will be archived forever, and someone can pull it up and say, look at your discussion. Back then you said. So I think the spirit has been captured in perpetuity now on YouTube. So all in favor of voting for this response plan. Do we have to vote on this, Francis? I think we do. Do we?
I think it would be good just to get it.
I think we need to vote that we are in agreement with it as it is. Yes, but what?
Someone should move it.
No, I know. Before we ask for the motion, I'm just making sure we have to do it.
I think it would be good because then that way it has consensus and it was approved by the commission as a whole.
Is there then a motion, Sarah or Jude? Jude is moving.
I'm trying. I move that we adopt the policy as we've agreed after discussion.
Sarah, did you second that?
Second.
All in favor of such a thing? Of this particular motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next on our agenda is the AAPOA mediation, and this is this item on the agenda is twofold. Number one, I'm looking at a calendar. I know it's off screen. Tomorrow we will be we will be speaking with the negotiation team, and we need to convey to them points of emphasis that ICPOC would like to take forward to mediation as they continue to mediate a collective bargaining agreement. I know that we have some, sorry, I was trying to open the document. We have already identified several things that we wanted them to work on, as indicated, in our resolution. And what I want to do is make sure, there we go, that if there is anything else that needs to be on the minds of the negotiators as they go into mediation regarding the CBA. Stop speaking all at once. So we requested.
Can I ask a question? Is it in the list of items that you have? Is there a ranking or a priority back to my colleague, yes, who reminds me that every time we have meetings like about our priorities, do we is it all of them equal weight, or are there certain things that have more weight than others?
The number one thing, which is number one on our list, is that we would like to see the names of police officers against whom complaints are made. Hands down, number one.
Okay. And then there was a total of what? 4?
We have 3, and I was just going to read them to everyone in case you don't have that resolution up, because it's from July 1st, which is 20 days ago. We also requested that discipline recommendations. So there is a thing called progressive discipline for those who may be participating who are unaware. And that means that police officer discipline is based on events currently within the last 24 months. And so what we were asking is that that time frame be extended such that police officer discipline is based on a wider body of a longer period of time. So we asked for 7 years. This is also with the understanding, though, for anybody unfamiliar, that it is possible that progressive discipline means that a person might be disciplined, could potentially be fired on the first offense. So progressive discipline is a system, but it has flexibility in there for chiefs and deputy chiefs to use different levels at different steps. And so what we were asking, so we are understanding that someone could be fired on their first offense, but understanding that when officers are disciplined, that their last body of work be considered for 7 years, not just for 24 months. That was number 2. And number 3 was requesting the elimination of binding arbitration for termination. And for those just hearing that for the first time for us, what that means to us is that if the police chief should decide to terminate someone, we would like that someone to be permanently terminated and not have their ability to have their job arbitrated back. A couple of things before we discuss. That means that, so the consequences of someone getting their job back due to arbitration are several. One of which is that if that person comes back on the job after having been fired by the chief, for example, then they're walking around with understanding that they have, some level of ability to do whatever they want to do because they've gotten fired, but they weren't really fired. Number 2, for many police chiefs, and I'm not speaking for this police chief because he can speak for himself, many police chiefs have, however, expressed that in the future, they are reluctant to fire people because they know that they will just be coming back. And that is not a situation in which a police chief might want to find him or herself. It has been brought to my attention that you could have a very terrible police chief who would just fire people because they did not like that person. And in this case, it would be great for people to be able to arbitrate to get their jobs back. However, if a municipality such as Ann Arbor found themselves with such a terrible police chief who was firing people just because he did not like them, then that municipality should fire the police chief. And if they can't trust their police chief to discipline their police officers, then that's another problem that is outside the scope of what we do. So those are the 3 requests that we have made. We also in our resolution asked that we be included and that our ideas be taken into serious consideration by the negotiating team. And we asked for some updates. So basically we just have these 3 items on the, wait, I am so sorry. I could share the screen. There. So now you guys can see this, yes? So that's what we had in our resolution. And the question becomes, is there anything else that we should add to our list as we speak with the negotiating team tomorrow? Now, I can't see.
If I can ask, what is the 1, 2, 3 again? You said the names would be number 1 and then number.
That's number 1.
Is there any kind of consensus on the commission of anything else or
Francis, can you do this part? Because I can only see 5 of you at a time when I share my screen. So can you navigate who should talk next, please? Thank you.
I actually can only see you.
Oh, heavens. Can everyone only see me? Okay, I can see Jude waving her hands.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was just going to ask, is the request to see that this contract be limited to 1 year, is that off the table?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
wait, I did it. I can see everyone now. I changed. Now I can see everyone. Anan.
We talked about a representative of IPCOC be part of the negotiation. Does this, when the police or the city negotiate with the union, that we should be part of, present? Is that, where does that fall? Not under here and someplace else, or?
That doesn't fall right here, right now. This is, I think, gone past the point of the Rubicon. Right. And we are in mediation now. So I would not advocate for that. I think the role is much earlier in the process. I would not want to.
But if you're asking about it for next time. Right,
that is, yeah, I concur with Councilman Ramlawi, and I also think that at your meeting tomorrow, I don't know who's on meeting, I'm guessing Dr. Jackson, you Francis, perhaps with the city attorney's office about this, which will be kind of a debrief before the mediation meeting on the 29th, so next week. But you'll hear more about that, but I again concur with Councilman Ramlawi that for this mediation meeting, well, the first one, could be one and only one, it could be however many. The first one is, though, July 29th, and this is between the Police Officers Union, their legal representation, and the city attorney's office, basically, and HR, and Chief Cox. And but there is not a there's it's not the opportunity does not exist for an ICPOC representative, a council representative, anyone outside of that group to participate in that mediation.
And Anan, we can take up this question at another time because there's actually a bunch of legal questions about that. We know we can't do it now, but the question is, can we do it ever? And that's actually, there's some legal questions in that. And so we could talk about that at another time. Okay. We know we can't do it now, but can we do it ever is a different question. And so the question to right now is, are there other things that we need to emphasize besides these three things? There were certainly other things on people's wish lists at other times.
I heard Jude ask about the term. 1 or 3 years.
Yeah, I was just asking because I mean, even the paragraph right before that is, was asking, would it be possible for this to be negotiated as a 1-year contract, meaning that it expired at the end of December 2020, which would mean that we basically were almost immediately going to start negotiating a 3-year that would kick in afterwards. And I was just asking if that was off the table as an option.
I think that is off the table for this particular contract, is my understanding. Okay. I will, however, clarify that tomorrow.
I say you can always ask.
So I will certainly ask this also, and I will, if the answer is no, I'll ask why so that I can report back.
Because this is a council, as you well know, conveyed your very precise recommendations. This is what we approved. It was your recommendations were not edited. And so this is what we adopted. So this was also council's direction to the mediation team, that if they can't attain substantial changes, consider limiting the duration to 1 year. That was a council directive.
So just to be clear to Jude and everybody, we will ask about this one here, and if it is not possible, we will find out why and report back.
But I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. Mediation hasn't happened yet. Okay, right. You're saying this is what you'd like to consider and discuss, right. And so I wouldn't go into this assuming things are off the table.
Okay. So I'm just saying that I'm just committing that as right. So nothing is off the table. And if council has also made all of this their directive?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't amend this in any way.
All right. So was there anything else that we need to think about as we ponder this?
Just as Councilmember Ramlawi said at the outset, though, but I think you've done this. You say, okay, this is a drop dead thing. We need to see in this contract. This is less important, slightly less important. We can live with, something less than what you're asking. I think maybe if there's if these requests are nuanced in some way, so. But how do you nuance saying, for example, the elimination of binding arbitration? That's hard to nuance.
Yep, that was pretty clear.
But what you want there is the chief to have the ability, basically, to manage his people and to terminate. Yeah.
Right. And if you don't trust your police chief to do that, no offense, chief, then you guys need a new police chief. Not you guys, but everyone in the whole world. Okay. If there are no immediate thoughts, if there are things that you think of, if you would like to text or email me in the next 12 hours, 18 hours, have at it. Francis, do you want to go right to complaint review or do you want to try to do the policing during COVID quickly, trespass quickly?
Yeah, I think we should try to do the update on the COVID. That definitely how police are interacting with the public and also what they're doing. There was a lot of miscommunication, I know, with the downtown associations as far as what police were doing with regard to mask enforcement and how they were approaching the governor's most recent change in that, in as far as making them mandated in crowded public areas. So I think we should have that discussion very quickly.
Okay. Also, you all know here, but and other people watching may or may not know, we certainly got lots of, we got text messages, photos, we were tweeted at directly, we got phone calls the next day about interactions with 3 police with a young African-American person in West Park. Maybe 2 weeks ago. And one of the problems with that interaction is that all 3 of the officers were unmasked as they interacted with this youth. It is my understanding that they gave him a ride home, and before putting him in the squad car, he was patted down, but that happened with no masks. And so those police officers were in close contact with that young person without any masks on, and that was really problematic. There's also a question about where he rode in the squad car. I got that question as well. If he was placed in the back or if he rode in the front, which certainly makes a difference perception-wise if he were dropped off somewhere. But Chief, can you speak to the officers not wearing their masks?
They should have had their mask on. It's simple as that. So.
Okay, thank you. And I believe you've done some remediation or something in the interim. We discussed.
Yeah, no, we're certainly talking to all the officers. One, they should have their mask on for their own health. 2 is to make sure that we respect the health of the citizens that live here, and I think they understand that. I think it was a combination of heat and just laziness in some way, shape, or form. But they get it now, and if you see our officers out there, particularly when they have contact with the public, they will have on mask. And so I would say that we've learned from this and moved on.
Okay. And then Francis, could you make your revisit the downtown clarifications, please?
Yes, we just had a miscommunication. The downtown area associations meet bi-weekly with the city administrator, and it just by coincidence, both council members, Ramwali and Lum, attend those meetings also, and the DDA. And we had some questions as far as what police were going to be doing with regard to enforcement, and especially being outside on the weekends when we close the streets. And initially we were told that police weren't going to be doing much of anything. But then we were given a press release that the department and Chief Cox sent out, which ended up being actually prior to the meeting that we had, explaining what the requirements were under the executive order, but then also stating what police would be doing as far as, meeting with people and, going up to them, asking them if they have masks, to put a mask on, so on and so forth. Also encouraging businesses to call 911 if there's an issue, and so on. They're not out there, and Chief, jump in and correct me at any time, but it's my understanding you're not out there giving fines and really writing tickets. It's more of a community kind of compliance thing and working with people. I don't know that we're actually having a lot of trouble with people, but it was more just working with the public and getting them to actually voluntarily wear the masks.
You did an exceptional job. Yes, that's exactly it. You know, anytime we have contact with the public, particularly around these public health issues, traditionally a non-police issue, again, is we're trying to educate the public how they can stay safe and how everyone else can stay safe. So that's our primary, goal out there. We do have the ability, obviously, to write a citation in the executive order, but that would be reserved, obviously, for somebody who's clearly doesn't care about the well-being of the public or anyone else. And so that is not our goal. You use that word enforcement quite a bit. We hear the public. We are not looking to enforce anything unnecessarily. But we're trying to get the community certainly to meet us halfway and be respectful of the rest of the community. So that's our primary goal during this time, to educate and get people to comply voluntarily, like a lot of people have been doing throughout this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions out there as far as once the students start returning. You see a lot on social media with the fraternities having their parties and a lot of people outside, but in a photograph, it could look like there's 200 people and there's actually only 20. So the question is, will police be going to those things or things like that? And again, I think those are questions we may not even be able to answer until the students are fully here. I know right now a lot of them are, but it's nowhere near what it's going to be at the end of August.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say,
go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So, and we don't know, we don't have that crystal ball and seeing what's going to happen, but we're trying to plan and have conversations with many people regarding both students and the regular citizens that are here in regards to maybe a second outbreak of this COVID and what that means. So, there's a lot of people involved in this, and just ask the public just be aware and respectful of the times that we're living in currently, and the well-being of everyone. We do not want to be out here enforcing anything related to this. We want people to voluntarily comply, and that's going to be our stance going forward. But as the circumstances get worsened, I'm sure there'll be people who would want us to do more. At a time when everyone's talking about defunding, and asking the police to do less, it seems like we were asked to do more and more each day. At the same time, we're asked to do less. It's a very trying times we're in right now regarding some of this stuff. So, or I should say, confusing times. So education is our main goal right now. Thank you.
We should move on. Do you want to do complaint review, trespass? I think we can do the worksheet in 30 seconds.
Yeah, the worksheet, it will definitely be 30 seconds. Complaint review, we do have a very small number of complaints in 2020. Obviously, we were under stay-at-home for a portion of the last 6 months. So I would like us to get moving on that. So Lisa and I are reaching out to start a preliminary review of them to gear them up. I think getting an understanding of those of you that would like to be on the review committees, making sure that we have solid committees. I know when we started using that round robin system that we had approved, it got very, very confusing very quickly, who was assigned to which complaints. So we may want to just break up into permanent groups, like have group A, group B, group C, and do it that way, or however, but I'd like to start doing those in the next 2 weeks.
We also have a need, though, for some flexibility, Chief, because as you know, with the volunteer commission, many people work during the day. And so there are going to be times when we're going to have to review body cam footage after 5 p.m. or after 4 p.m. And I know there was a restriction before on when we could do that. We know that Council Member Romlawi was pretty vocal about that. And so I know that managing the staff is your job, but we're just kind of putting up front that there are going to be times when we are going to have groups of people who who can only do this after 5 p.m. because they work. And that's the consequence of having a volunteer board to do that. And we wouldn't want to have a board of people who were free during the day, because that's a different composition of people. So we need to have all different kinds of people, some of whom can't review body cam footage, et cetera, until after a certain time period because they have to go to work. And some people are going to work, even though, different kinds of jobs during COVID. Obviously, we have no idea how to review body cam footage during COVID right now. So we'll have to figure that out when we get to it. We'll have to figure out a process for doing that as well. But we are going to need some flexibility on that time thing. And so what we can do is kind of poll everyone. So I'll send an email and I'll ask you about your interest in reviewing complaints, because for some people that's why they're on the commission. For other people, there are policy issues that are more important. So I know that every single person, that's not their number one thing they want to do necessarily. So I'll send the email about your interest, and then we'll also poll you about how we might do this and see if that's amenable to everyone. We do have a small number of complaints now. We want to make sure we stay on top of those. And then do you want to do trespass really quickly?
Yeah, I think Mohammed, do you want to give an update on what that document is and that I sent out earlier? And I should share it. I think that's a larger conversation. I don't know if we're going to be able to vote on that tonight or not.
I think briefly, it's basically a revised memo that both the subcommittees from ECPAC and Human Rights Commission worked on after a number of meetings, and we were quite represented from ECPAC on that subcommittee. And the as you see, is some of these issues have been a little bit changed in a way to be more explicit. In terms of timing of trespassing, in terms of places, in terms of the appeal, in terms of other options that probably individuals would have. The issue that we have right now is the Human Rights Commission were supposed to vote on that in their past meeting on July 8th, but they did not do that. So what we can do is we can take the opportunity is if you feel that you have any kind of changes to this document as a draft, that can be incorporated. If you feel that it's fine as is, what we can do is probably vote on it next time on our regular meeting in August. Hopefully at that time also the Human Rights Commission will vote on it too. And there will be a meeting probably with the chief and probably others to. Why
don't we suggest that Mohammed and Francis, are you guys the leads on this?
Jude and Commissioner Billups, all the four of us are on it.
Okay, so why don't I send this out again, and anyone who wants to make any revisions should reply, and I'll make sure that the four of you are in the area to which people can reply. And why don't we set a deadline of doing that for so if we set August 3rd, if we could have revisions back by August 3rd, is that a reasonable deadline? That's about 2 weeks.
I think that's fine. I think that's reasonable.
So I'll send it out again. Please go through with a fine-tooth comb. Please make any suggested revisions and get that back to the team by August 3rd. Councilmember Ramlawi and then Councilmember Lum.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the Human Rights Commission when this was being discussed, and really they were on it for 18 months. So this has been about a 2-year at least conversation. So just know that the backdrop of this, and I just quickly looking at it, I just received it right before the meeting. It's gonna meet a lot of the way it is currently pushback based on some of the recommendations. It just, to me, it lacks consistency in enforcement. And when we go forward, I would just recommend to the folks working on this, and I appreciate their time and effort into it. I think Francis, being downtown a lot has a perspective that that others may not share and have, and so I would encourage more communication and input into this, and see it from more than just one or two angles. But when it comes to enforcement, consistency is going to be important for equity and for application, and just make sure things are applied properly. So that's all I got. I know we're running late today. Thank you.
And I'll just point out too that Commissioner Billups has significant experience with this as well, working with lots of people who may come in contact with this. And of course, we respect Commissioner Walton's experience as well, because so many Avalon clients and properties have, there are people who have encounters with this as well. So we're lucky to have several experts on this one. Councilmember Lum.
Quickly, and if it could be, and probably it already has, but run past the, like the where there are references to, for example, the second bullet under trespass notice that we're reading here. You're recommending a limitation of a reentry ban to 24 hours. And, it would be nice to hear from the Ann Arbor District Library on that. Similarly, the Blake AATA on Blake. I just think, and again, maybe you've already.
I think there was somebody. There was somebody from the subcommittee, I think, that was following up with them, and I also followed up and met last week with Ann Arbor Housing Commission as well, because they actually do have a slightly different. They have a different interaction with it than even Avalon does. So made sure that both of those, and they say, Mohammed, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought somebody maybe from HRC was going to be speaking to Blake and the library as well.
That was my understanding.
And that's extremely important.
Yeah, that is. That's got to happen. Yeah.
My understanding was that people are reaching out to community partners, including the AATA and the district library, and even other constituents such as Washington Housing Association, as I communicate with Leslie Stambaugh about this. So I think there is a very wide swath of the community that's providing input into this.
Yeah, right.
And so I know that will all be taken into account as people continue to revise this or work on it. For our commission, though, those of us who are have only been peripherally, I removed myself from this about 8 months ago, I think. Nope, 7 months ago. So all of us need to give input back to the team, and we need to do that by the 3rd, such that they can move forward and maybe give feedback back to HRC before they meet again. And then last but not least, okay.
I was going to say, because you obviously can't do that in isolation. And just the last page, you have other related questions. You have a list of 3 questions. Those appear to be questions mostly for the AAPD. And obviously those need to be, their input on those has to be.
Just about the Blake and the public library, why we went with the 24 hours is just because they are supported by taxpayers. They
have their own.
But they are autonomous. No question.
We realize that they are all autonomous too, but we thought maybe because they get some funding from taxpayers, could this be
treated like other entities that receive taxpayer funds?
Right, but just like the city council can't determine policies for AATA or the Ann Arbor District Library, their boards determine those policies, and I'm sure that their board, this is the kind of thing that their board would like to discuss and sign off on before, and make recommendations back to ICPOC on before ICPOC, says, okay, here's what we think should be implemented.
Well, I thought that HRC was taking the lead on this and not ICPOC.
Well, I'm sorry, but I apologize. We're going all over the map here in order, but just knowing, I'm sure many of you, if not all, know that the library and Blake have their own policies, and so again, we want to be in partnership, and we can't. I don't think it really works when we unilaterally decide things.
Can't do that.
I don't think that's the intent.
Okay.
I mean, even from my early conversations and recent involvement, I don't think that has been the intent to dictate to any of these entities what they should and shouldn't do. If I understand correctly, it's been to work in partnership with them to find out what they feel is reasonable or will work for them and their constituents.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think that a lot of these suggestions are great, and maybe that's what needs to be in writing by the August deadlines for us to take back to HRC to be able to make those adjustments.
Okay. And then the last item on our agenda is a very quick one. We are developing a task worksheet where we have a boatload of jobs that we should get done. And we would like people to sign up and volunteer to do them. It's right now, it's a working document. It's just a draft thing. And as we get it together, we would like each of you to pick some areas in which you feel you have some expertise and interest and sign up for them. You will notice that there are some places where I might have drafted some of you, like Jude, you and I talked a long time ago about doing some internal audit stuff. And so I said, you and I could do it. If you see your name on any assignment and you don't want to do it, just erase yourself. I will not be offended. I'm just using Jude as an example. If you're like, I don't want to talk about the budget anymore, Lisa, you can erase yourself. So we'll make that available to everyone, and we would love your expertise and your time and efforts on some of these projects. Feel free to add more projects, things to the to-do list, etc. as they come up. Obviously, just tonight we have identified a boatload of things that have to be done, but we have more things that we need to be doing, and also kicking out some reports, for example, things like that, and some things that as big things come up, we get distracted from some of the policy and procedure things, and we need to keep cranking those out so that this commission is sustainable and can just run like a well-oiled machine going forward. So you guys will see that coming to you, and I just wanted to give you a heads up that if you see your name on something you want to do, just erase yourself, but feel free to please add yourself to things that you can do so that we can use everybody's talents. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
And is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you. We all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.